going to be a great pleasure now to welcome Sir Jyotiraditya Scindia, Minister of Steel and Aviation on ET Now. Mr. Scindia, it's your first time I'm interacting with you on ET Now, so a very warm welcome and thank you for joining us.
Hello.
Hi, Mr. Scindia, this is Nikunj Dalmia from the ET Now studio. A very warm welcome.
Go ahead, Nikunj, your voice is getting broken off.
Okay, I'll try and the studio will boost up the audio. No, I'm saying it's the first time I'm interacting with you and we are live as we speak. So very warm welcome and thank you for accommodating this interview request.
Thank you so much for having me.
Mr. Scindia, first let's understand the timing of the steel duty rollback. What prompted the ministry to consider this at a time when globally one cannot decisively say that the inflation fear are behind us?
Okay, so when I took over in July, the first thing that I said that I did was to set up two advisory committees, one for the integrated steel plants and the other for the secondary steel industry. We then went through a very thorough process of deliberations in both committees and a process of multiple iterations on what are the factors that will contribute to steel pricing, both on the raw material side of iron ore and coking coal, the price trends of both of those, as well as on the issues of finished products, what the import parity prices are internationally, and what are the concerns with regard to seasonality, because very akin to civil aviation, the steel industry also goes through an up and down cycle in terms of demand. And as you're very well aware, the monsoon season is a downtime for steel demand because the monsoon, everything construction pretty much shuts down. And so we went through a very thorough deliberative process, and through that process working not necessarily as a regulator but more as a collaborator and a facilitator, which is what I believe our role is in the Ministry of Steel. We worked through many sensitivity analyses, and then I had promised them that we will take a decision in November once the festive season starts, and we look at what happens to price trends both on the commodity side as well as the finished product side. We then had a series of meetings within government, with the Home Ministry, with the Coal and Mines Ministry, then with the Commerce and Industry Ministry, and finally with the Finance Minister about 10-12 days ago. And then we took a holistic view that the time has come now to lift the export duties on all 9 HSN codes for finished steel product, including the 2 stainless steel, 7219 and 7222, as well as looking at the raw material end for less than 58 iron ore for zero level of export duty there, as well as for pellets, removing the 45% to zero. So it's a considered decision taken by all arms of government together with all the stakeholders within the steel industry.
If international steel prices go higher and if there is a concern of inflation coming back, could this decision be reconsidered?
Well, let me tell you right now, if you look at coking coal, prices have gone from $600 to $300. They've shed almost 50%. Iron ore prices have come off almost 25-30%. If you look at finished product of steel, they've come off between 22 to 25% across all 9 HSN codes. If you look at the global, so one is on the pricing front. Now, mind you, that pricing front is also driven to a great extent by demand. And if you look at global demand today, global demand has gone through a downturn across the world due to the pall of and fear of recession across number of economies, and therefore there is a sluggishness on the pricing front as well. Even the largest producer of steel today, which is China, demand has come off to a great extent. And therefore, the only silver lining across the global stage is India, where demand has crossed double digits, which has been historic. And therefore, the Indian steel industry has been shored up to a huge extent by domestic demand. And therefore, I do feel that the export markets where Indian steel has got a footprint definitely need to be retained, because as you are well aware, customer acquisition is the most expensive part of a value strategy, and the second most important part is customer retention. So certainly the customers that our steel companies have acquired must be retained on a global international scenario. And I think removal of this export duty, even in the current environment, though it may not yield dividends in the immediate or short term, but I'm very confident that our companies will regain their international footprints in the medium term.
Steel companies in last financial year, Mr. Scindia, they reported record profits. The profits which Tata Steel reported were comparable to TCS. Was extraordinary profit also in consideration when you considered imposing these steel duties? I'm trying to understand perhaps that was extraordinary profit a consideration which prompted government to impose these duties?
So what you have to understand is that the steel industry is a cyclical industry, and it goes through cycles of crests and troughs. However, you also have to understand that steel is not a finished product. Steel is not even an intermediate product. It's the initial product, which then flows into a bevy of downstream industries. If you like, starting from civil aviation to automotive to white goods to FMCG to engineering goods to capital goods, across the length and breadth of any economy. And therefore, steel forms the very, if you will, the turning point of any economy moving. And therefore, if there is an inordinate amount of increase in that initial product pricing, that has a huge effect across all sectors of the economy. And I think that must have been the consideration when the export duty had been put in place on the 22nd of May, looking at the inflationary environment. And I think it's reaped its dividends in terms of the numbers that I have just shared with you, both in terms of pricing of fall in prices of raw materials as well as fall in prices of finished steel. And therefore, today, I think 6 months down the road was the right time to lift these export duties and allow our steel companies again to regain their footprints internationally.
Mr. Scindia, you'll appreciate the spirit of my next question, which is that there were two sectors which had extraordinary profits last year because of global market conditions, steel and the oil and gas sector. And on both these sectors, a duty in a sense was imposed by the government, which now has been rolled back. Now, the messaging, some would argue, from the government may be that these are windfall profits which need to be taxed, and government perhaps does not want India Inc. to have extraordinary profits.
I think you're way off mark here. I don't think the connectivity has to be with the profitability of any particular industry. I think it has to do much more with reining in and controlling inflation, and especially with regard to commodities that have a cascading effect on the downstream. Let me correct myself, not the downstream, but the mainstream of the economy across multiple industries.
Thank you for clearing the air, Mr. Scindia. The global manufacturing...
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure as always.
Can I ask you just two more follow-up questions, Mr. Scindia? Mr. Scindia.
Sure, sure.
Right. My next follow-up question perhaps is the most pertinent question, which is the global manufacturing sector is shifting, whether it is China plus one or India, like you just highlighted, is now coming as a manufacturing power. What big plans the steel ministry has to create and ensure that large steel capacities are getting created in India, and a lot of manufacturing from China could shift to India, and India may regain at the cost of what is happening in the world?
So if you look at our targets going forward in the near future, India has grown from, according to our national steel policy, which was enshrined in 2017, with a capacity that was in place of 100 million tons in 2013, an increase of 50% to 150 million tons per annum. On the other hand, in terms of actual production, those numbers have also grown from 80 million tons per annum in 2013-14 to about 121 million tons as on date. So there's been a 50% increase in that as well. If you look at our per capita consumption numbers, which were at an abysmal low of 57.8 kilograms in 13-14, those have grown by 52% to close to 78 kilograms per capita. It is our ambition going forward by 2030, which is 7 years down the road from today, to grow our capacity from 150 million tons today to 300 million tons, to grow our production from 120 million tons today to about 240 million tons, and increase our per capita consumption from the 77.8 kilograms that we have today to almost about 150 kilograms. So there are tremendous ambitious programs in place. This, of course, will lead to tremendous manufacturing capabilities in India. And let me give you an example of that. The very fact that the Prime Minister, under his leadership, has created a world-class facility in Vadodara, where Airbus will manufacture the C295 aircraft in India for the first time in its history, where out of 56 ordered, 40 will be manufactured in India, where almost 13,000 parts and assemblies will be created in India. Almost 4,000 to 6,000 engineering jobs will be created, and the spin-offs of that from a technology perspective will be huge across multiple sectors, where you will see tremendous levers being put in place because of the ecosystem that will be set up. Now, that for you is just one example. The government has a very ambitious capex program of almost 10 lakh crores per annum to be put in infrastructure. And that is across all sectors, from roads to highways to ports to buildings, across airports, across every sector pretty much, which is resulting in this increase in steel demand of double digits, which is happening nowhere in the world except in India. And that truly and purely is because of the Prime Minister's push on infrastructure, the Prime Minister's push on capex, and the very fact that each ministry is being monitored in terms of the capex targets, not for every quarter alone, but even every month. So there's a huge push on the manufacturing side in India, being pioneered by the Prime Minister himself.
My last question, Mr. Scindia. Large part of the capex and heavy lifting in the steel sector has been done by the private sector. What role do you think the government companies and especially Steel Authority will play in this vision of yours?
Well, I don't think it's one at the cost of the other. I think it's very important to understand that in any successful economy across the world that has emerged as a global superpower on the economic front, there has been a combination of a mix of the private sector and the public sector. And so is the case in India. I think it should be very heartening for all of us, and especially for all of you in ET now as well, the very fact that the private sector is taking on a pioneering role. And I think that's a good thing. For me, every single company is an equal stakeholder on the table. And I think as a Minister of Steel, What's very important for me is that in every stakeholder's success lies my ministry's success, and in every stakeholder's success also lies India's success. So I think this distinction that you're making on your channel between public and private sector is pretty antiquated, if I may say so. And if India has to be powered, it has to be powered by both the public sector and the private sector. Having said that, our public sector companies also have a very, very ambitious program in terms of capacity expansion, be it SAIL or be it our other companies. And they will partner in this ambitious program that we have to go from 150 million tons per annum capacity to 300 million tons per capacity by 2030.
Mr. Scindia, on behalf of everyone from ET Now, thank you very much for accommodating this interview request, and thank you for once again patiently answering all our questions.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure as always.